Boom. Blessings and much love to everybody at Anointed Life Mentorship International. We are back with part number 2 of the Healing Power class on the rest, inherit the healing. Bible says to rest, inherit the promise. Healing is a promise, and we are back here tonight. Shout out to Holy Sister Markeisha joining us in the comment section. Holy Sister Kimberly Thomas. Blessings and much love. Awesome to be back in the room with you all. Awesome to be back in the room with you all. Alright, for those of you joining us in the comment section, feel free. Shout out to Francis Wafula Fam. Blessings and much love. Blessings and much love. You all hold 1 second. There we go. There we go. Blessings, blessings. Shout out to Holy Sister Delia Jackson. Blessings and much love. Blessings and much love. Alright, just give a few seconds. Let everybody come in. Everybody come in. Alright, while you're there, shout out to Holy Sister Tonya Woodkey. Blessings and much love. Blessings and much love, Holy Sister. Alright, while everybody's coming in, I just want to ask a question. How was the digestion of the information that we went through last night? How is the digestion? How did that go? Blessings from Kenya. Kenya is in the house. Blessings and much love, holy brother. Yeah. How did last night's session go? For those of you who were here last night, Holy Sister Odelia says, hello, Holy Brother Zane, and everyone. Right, everybody just greet everybody. You know how we used to do it in church. Greet everybody in the comment section. Yeah, get to know each other. Greet everybody. Yeah. So, how was the digestion of the content last night? Saturating, overwhelming. It was good. You get through some. You want to get through some more. Yeah, have to replay. Yeah, I know. There's a 3-hour session last night. You know how long I have not done a 3-hour session? Publicly, that is. Because it happened a few times in coaching sessions. 3 hours. I went up to 4 hours just recently. Like a whole 2.5 hours over the time. Blessings and much love to Holy Sister Monica and Holy Brother Norman in the comment section. Blessings to Holy Brother Leventi coming in from Romania. Blessings to Holy Brother Telvin Jeffries in the house, the Reverend Apostle. That was really good, and I was excited for tonight. Alright, awesome. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Holy Brother Leventi says, very powerful and full of light. Okay. I will have to watch tomorrow. Alright, alright. No problem, no problem. No problem at all. Good to see everyone here. So last night in particular, we ended up in like 3 hours. Right? And for those of you who are on Patreon, these sessions will be posted on Patreon, and the benefit that you get from Patreon is that I would actually provide the MP3, well, because of Patreon's podcast connection, I can actually provide you the MP3 on Patreon, so it will go directly to your podcast episode, or the MP3 or the MP4 or the M4A. So for those of you on Patreon, look out, don't be afraid. It coming. All right. Okay. So I'm seeing everybody. I'm seeing everybody coming in. Yeah, we're just giving a few more seconds, allow people to come in, and then we continue. All right, so yesterday in particular, we took a little time to get to the idea, to the topic, because I realized that I needed to really give more context to Bible dynamics so that when we look at these things, you all can understand it. And I just don't leave everyone just not, I don't understand that. So the explanations in particular over the progression of the session took some time. So by the time we got basically to the to Genesis, we are already about an hour and a half into it, hour and a half, 2 hours into it, yeah, about an hour and a half. So tonight, what we're going to do is pick up from where we left off. And I don't think that I have to explain much Bible dynamics here tonight. I don't think so. I mean, even if I have to, that's what we're here for. But we should be able to move from Genesis, finish, uncover what we want to uncover in Genesis, and then go to Moses. So you can see what is in your Bible and what has always been there in your Bible. And then we can actually go across to Yeshua. We can even touch across by Paul. Right? So on that note, welcome everyone again tonight. Welcome again tonight. And let's get rolling. If everybody is tucked in, seated and buckled up, we're going to need to buckle up for these things right here. Trust me. If you're buckled in, say let's go in the comment section. Let's go. Let's take off. So I've been looking forward to this session. Before I actually move on, sound check. Is everybody hearing me clearly? Is the mic clear? Let me just do a double check on mic volume here. Sound check. Shout out to Holy Brother Chris Bordenkircher. Blessings and much love to you, Holy Brother. Awesome to have you here tonight. Alright, sound check. Am I clear? Yeah? Volume a little better now? A little stronger? Let's give me a sound check there, everybody. Is the volume a little clearer? Good? Nice. Song and strong. Not song like a distance. Alright. Shout out to Holy Brother Polly B in the comment section as well. Blessings and much love, bro. Blessings and much love. Awesome to see you. See you rocking a fantastic photo. Looking good. Alright. Everybody saying let's go. Take off. According to Holy Brother Telvin. Alright, so we are returning tonight to Genesis chapter 2. So let's head back across to Genesis chapter 2 for those of you who would like to follow this and see that Zane is not making this up. I encourage you to get a Bible. I'm using King James Version here. You can get a Bible, preferably a King James, so you can follow the components of the translation of the King James. Yeah? Thanks, brother. Miss you too, bro. Miss you too. We got a chat. Right? So if you had to get a Bible, go get a Bible, or get another device, or turn it on your computer, something. If you're on your computer, you could go to BibleGateway.com, and go to Genesis chapter 2. Right? Again, we're in the King James Version. And for those of you who may be asking, why am I using the King James Version? As I mentioned yesterday, one of the benefits of one of the things that our research process benefited from was my knowledge of the science of translation. No, I do not speak Hebrew, nor do I speak Greek. But what I do understand is the science of translation. I've been a translator for over 20 years. I've lectured in 2 languages. I've translated both legal as well as technical stuff. once had attempted a medical translation. I was a little bit out of my league, but I got through it. Right? And I've interpreted for some time too. So the science of translation is something that I understand, and a little more than the average translator actually. This King James translation, you may have heard many theologians speak about the King James translation, and everybody would have varying perspectives about the translations. Through this research process, I can safely say that I actually scrutinized 11 versions of the Bible. Right? 11 versions. And whereas everybody would think that there's a better translation, having scrutinized 11 versions of the 11 versions of the Bible, myself, I could very, very securely assert that there is no perfect translation. See, one of the things that people need to understand about a translation is that the translation is always subject to the translator. And the translation usually reflects the priority of the translator in the translation. And every translation that I went through, each translation showed a different priority, which means depending on what you're studying, you might want to align yourself with a particular translation since that translator gives that particular component more emphasis. Yeah? The King James translation in particular, from the perspective of a translator, I would safely say that it is translator's gold. Because one of the things that they did with the King James translation is that they didn't really interpret the scriptures. What is the difference between, what does it mean to interpret? To interpret means that I would hear, that's what we do as an interpreter. An interpreter is responsible to communicate what somebody says in the source language, not only the words come out of their mouth, but the sentiment and what they mean, and actually communicate that into the target language. The source language is the language that you hear. The target language is the language that you are actually communicating in. Which means sometimes, I never forgot a very good example that took place, and it was something that was referenced in our translation class when I was studying translation, that is. Something that was referenced. In one of the Miss Universe pageants, there was a translator that was translating from Miss Venezuela. And everybody heard, because it was referenced in our translators class, to show people that there's a difference between communicating word for word what somebody says, but communicating word for word what they say does not mean that you're really interpreting or you're communicating what they're saying. And in this particular incident, this lady was expressing remorse concerning a world issue, and she expressed deep remorse concerning the world issue. And it was about one full sentence with at least 10 words. Right? At least 10 words. And the translator translated that into one word in Spanish. He says, lamentablemente. And everybody watch the translator like, what is that? Just one word? And then that one word, lamentablemente, in Spanish, that one word communicated the sentiment of that full sentence. Your Bible is not an interpretation of text. Most people don't know that. It's translation, and in some cases, especially the King James, I can't speak for all of the versions, because things like the Amplified Bible, they attempt to interpret. So what they do is actually add additional context to the text, additional words to give you more meaning. But the King James Version of the Bible, as a translator, I can say very, very comfortably that the King James translation is literally what they saw in the Hebrew text. They just took the same thing, just copy and paste it, and put it in English. So what this version allows me to do is to interface with the Hebrew text as though it's in Hebrew in English. And what the translators did was use punctuation to identify where the parallelisms were, where the expansions are, and so on, so that I could actually interpret this, for me to actually use it, for me to be able to apply it. Whilst the average English reader, they're not going to benefit from that like that. Now, if you actually want to study these scriptures and study text, King James Version is gold. Because they didn't really spend time trying to interpret it, they just actually translate. As though they took the text, that's literally, they just shoved it into the book and just put it, and just take the words and put it in English as best as they could. So you had a translation, but you really needed to understand the people to understand the translation. That is what most people don't really get. As a translator, myself, I translated English and Spanish, English and Spanish, very commonly Spanish into English. And if I'm translating for somebody from Venezuela, or I'm translating for somebody from Puerto Rico, or from España or Spain, I cannot just step on the platform and translate from somebody from Spain like that. I have to actually be very familiar with their culture to understand what the idiom, when I say the idioms, the expressions are, the little phrases, what those phrases mean. Because in one country that might mean one thing, and in another country something else. It's the same thing in English. Same thing in English. In Trinidad and Tobago, if we go into a party or we're going to hang out with people, in the United States we say, let's go hang out. In Trinidad and Tobago we say, let's go lime. Now, anybody in the United States hear the word lime, you think about the fruit. What we're saying is, you go lime, which has its own cultural background to it. But if anybody from the United States is translating from somebody in English, and the person says, hey, let's go lime, and you translate it through your American language, you communicate something completely different from what the man said. Because it's not what he's saying, it's what he means to say. See what I'm saying? And the Bible that you have, most of the translations do not communicate what they mean to say. They just communicate what they said. And this is where we found, we at the Institute, we found the gap. Because what we realize is that we have a translation, but the philosophy of the language, nobody really tapped into. And that's actually one of the things that got us in our direction to get the answers, to be able to explain the scriptures in the way that we're explaining it right now. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? And the King James translators in particular use a lot of punctuations very, very strategically. And they use the word and so on to communicate components of the Hebrew language that we are not accustomed to in English. So this is why yesterday took so long for me to really unpack all of those things and little literary components so that you can understand what you're reading, because you're reading it as English as English literature all of your life. And that's contributed to a lot of your issues. So, does that make sense? Type sense in the comment section. And whilst we're doing that, we're back in Genesis chapter 2. I ain't seen much sense at all. Alright, we've seen some sense. Right? Now, if you know anybody in this community that wanted to follow this live, please tag them. Or somebody could actually just do me the favor, one of the master mentors, and type at everyone and drop that in the comment section. Shout out to Holy Brother Elijah is in the house. Holy Brother Chris Ortel is in the house. Blessings and much love. So last night we were in the book of Genesis, and I took you to Genesis chapter 1. For those of you who did not listen to last night, to get more context to what we are about to cover here, I kindly encourage you to listen to that as soon as you can, so that what we're following here, you get more context to it. Shout out to Holy Sister Courtney King. Coach Courtney King is in the house. Blessings and much love. All right. So last night in the live, we went to chapter 1. And how many remember yesterday we saw that chapter 1 is actually a manual that shows you one. Let's recapitulate a few things here. Number 1, we saw from the text yesterday that creation is not physical. Creation is actually in the spirit. We saw that. It refers to your planning. Shout out to Holy Sister Rashida Kaikur. Lessons on much love. Lessons on much love. I was saying, right. We saw yesterday that creation, the word create, was actually specific to the mind. You remember that? We saw that everything that was created, the whole process of creation, was the word create was not used as you were taught, where you were taught that when God created the earth, it was physical creation, and so you have attributed the word to create to physicality. We saw yesterday that the text shows that creation and something that is made is actually made in the spiritual realm. Everybody remember that? Type I remember. That's the first and most foremost thing that we need to put on the center of the table before we touch anything else tonight. Do you remember that yesterday we saw that creation is to the mind or to the spirit? And so most of your life, you have been taught that your mind is not real. You've been taught that your mind is not real. You've been taught that your thoughts are just things. And we've seen so far that this is actually showing you here that creation, that which is created and that which was made, is actually to your thoughts. Number 2, we covered yesterday that the name Yahweh means to be self-existent and eternal. And with regard to the self-existent component of his name, self-existence equals self-determination. And self-determination can only be expressed in predetermination, which is why God in the New Testament is constantly referenced by the Apostle Paul that he foreordained and he predestined. So we also saw via the text yesterday that chapter 1 showed a plan. Chapter 1 is actually a plan. A plan that foreordains, predetermines, or predestines what God's word is and the role the helper plays with what God says. Because nothing in chapter 1 was actually physical creation. It was God laying out the plan, foreordaining how the Spirit is going to work with him. Does that make sense? Type sense. Number 3. We also saw that chapter 1 is a very good manual of how you function with the helper. You all remember that? And we ended yesterday on number 4. That rest, therefore, is nothing physical. It is unto the spirit. It's unto your mind. And therefore, in Christ, when you predetermine something, you have created it. Now, this might sound like something very far. How many of us thought yesterday that is like a big deal? Like that's huge. Don't be afraid. No judgment in the circle. We just want to be free and blunt here. How many of us thought that this is actually something that's like, wow, first time you're hearing it? Right? Just respond in the comment section. And I'm speaking specifically about the idea that creation is actually in the spirit. in your mind. And when you make a plan, you've created something. Right? Just like write your vision, make a plan. Right, I see nobody responding. Okay, so everybody is familiar with that, right? Now, the reason why I actually ask you that is because, believe it or not, you are living from this on a daily basis. Every time you sit down and you plan to go to work, you make that plan to go to work, do you not refer to that plan? Even if you have it in your mind, do you not refer to that plan to know what to do? Which is evidence that your plan exists in the spiritual realm. And what you are doing is acting based on that plan. See what I'm saying? Every time you plan to go to the cinema or to the beach, or you plan a family outing, you sit down and you think about it and you say, well, we do this. This is a sequence of events. This is a sequence of places that we visit. You, unknowingly, have actually created something in the spiritual realm. And you are referencing it to know what to do. So this is not something out of the norm. This is something that you are doing on a daily basis. You just may not have seen it like that because you've been taught that your mind and imagination is just a thing and you're treating it like a vision board. But it is actually a realm. The Garden of Eden is actually in the realm of the spirit, or the realm of the mind and imagination. The reason why I'm pointing that out here is because we need to understand that you have been given a helper. And chapter 1 of Genesis actually clearly shows that not only are you supposed to be planning for you, you're supposed to be planning for what the helper will do in union with you. See what I'm saying? And because he is a helper, he needs to know what the plan is. So he will know what to help you with. And we also identified that most of you, in particular, same thing, I want a sandwich and I make one. Exactly. Most of us realized yesterday that one of the reasons why you're not seeing results with anything is because you're not living self-existently, you're living codependently, and therefore, whereas the self-existent predetermines, most of you have been living based on reactions. You are reacting to what is around you. So what you're seeing is that which is being used as a source of wisdom for to know what to do. And most of you in particular was not aware of the fact that self-determination means for you to be self-determined, you have to understand what you're doing so that you can make a decision without external influence. And we use the example of someone who's studying a craft, or a plumber or engineer, or mechanic. They understand what the whys, and therefore they can diagnose without having to consult somebody else. You don't have to tell the plumber what needs to be fixed and how to fix it, because he understands. And understands basically means he understands the principle of the craft. Okay. So we're taking it from there today, and we're moving on to now let's identify verse 1 to 3. Let's identify what rest is and why you need to rest. Okay, so if everybody's alright with that, type rest time. If everybody's alright with that, type rest time. So let's take a look at this. Right, so we're picking up here today on rest. What rest is. No, we just identified that chapter 1. It says in verse 1 of chapter 2, thus the heavens and the earth were finished. Which means finished here is actually in reference to what was not in the earth as yet, which is finished is actually unto what is in the spirit. It is finished. And all the host of them. So the host of them, as in these things, animals, trees, all of that, is finished, which means it is actually created and alive in the spirit, which is in the mind and imagination. On the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. So number one, what is in the garden? In God's mind, it calls God's work, which he had made. Number two, which means what is made is actually unto that which is in the spirit. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And then verse 3, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Notice blessed and sanctified, one and the same. That's a couplet. He blessed it. He blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. And then there's a colon. Remember, colon means explanation or expansion. And after the colon it says, because he blessed and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. Which means he's actually blessed. He blessed it and sanctified it because in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So far we identify all of these words, finished, the host of them, which these animals, all these things, exist already, They're not physically present yet. And so if you are a son of God, your mind, because you have the Spirit of Christ, and Paul says that you have the mind of Christ, then that which you plan is real. It's very present. Right? As a matter of fact, you live from that realm on a daily basis. You interface with people based on your mental imagery of yourself. They're watching your physical body, but in your mind, they're speaking to that person in your mind. Does that make sense? They're speaking to you and seeing your physical body, but in your mind, you seeing them interface with the person in your mind. So you're doing this on a daily basis. You're just double-minded. You're using the spiritual realm, which is in your head, your mind and imagination. You're using it, but you're not actually using it with structure. You're just clicking in and out, because in your mind you were taught that which is real is that which is tangible, that which is dust. Now it's on this note here that people actually also saying that, well, are waiting for God to heal me, because to you, only when it's tangible, it's real. But this saying here, that which is real is that which is in the spirit. So that's one. Level 2. Notice the parallelisms here from verse 2. And on the seventh day, well, before I go into parallelisms, anybody notice here that the seventh day does not have a morning and an evening and a morning? Anybody notice that? Anybody notice that the seventh day doesn't have an evening and a morning? So you're reading this. But this is Sister Monica says she does know. Alright? Okay. See, this is what happens when you're reading your book by chapters and not reading it as a scroll, which means that forget the chapters and the verses and read it thing like a scroll. Because you're reading, you're accustomed. You get up and you say, okay, I'll read chapter 3 today. And tomorrow, I read chapter 4 this morning. I read one chapter, a chapter a day. A chapter a day keeps the guilt away. Yeah? And so, you're reading the thing like that. Chapter 1 showed for every day, there was evening and there was morning. The first day. And there was evening and there was morning. The second day. And there was evening and there was morning. The third day. Right up to day 6. The only day that don't have an evening and a morning here. Like an apple. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like an apple a day keep the doctor away. You read a chapter a day, keep the guilt away. That is what most people read the Bible. I mean, let's just be honest. Right? Let me drink some water and now know this. You need to understand. You're reading to please God, to appease God as though He's Zeus. See, I make that statement there. Next thing you see these viewers drop from 14 to 2. I might be mashing some toes with that one right. Oh gosh, don't mind me. I just having a. We just keeping the mood light. But no condemnation, yeah. We just keeping the mood light. Don't take that serious. So we rest in the completion of the work. Hold on, we come into that. Hold on. So the question is here. Why are you not seeing a morning and an evening here? The implication in the text is that man was not made to live working mentally regularly. And that is why half of you all exhausted in life. Because codependent life means that you never rest. You always have some external thing to respond to. Codependent life is a life in the pursuit of validation. What this is actually telling you here, that man is designed to come into the truth, validate it, rest after understanding what they're going to do and what the helper will help them do, what the helper will do when they do these things. This is the corresponding connection, the corresponding action that the helper will take and then rest and just walk out what God put in them. So that it's like just following a map on a daily basis. In the same way, listen to this. We can use this as an example. If you plan to go to the beach or plan to go to the mall with your family, let's say you have some family coming from a different state or from a different country to come to stay with you. What this is actually saying here, that what rest is that you make a plan as to what this vacation is going to be like, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, yeah, or day 10, 15, or however long they come to stay. You keep that there, and you live by, and when you rest is when it's actually that you're satisfied with it. You're not adding or taking away anything from it again. And every day, you just reference what you're supposed to do, execute. And you expect them, once it is communicated to them, to fall in line when you start to execute. In that case, you are not working, you are resting. You're resting in what already is, and all you're doing is executing. According to this right here, that's how you're supposed to live your life in Christ. I'll show you that's what Jesus did. That's what Paul did as well. But most of you have been living most of you, not knowing this, have been living a codependent life. And your codependent life is you have no plan. You don't have a long-term set that you're just executing. No. You are constantly responding to someone or something. So if the neighbor speak today, the neighbor, boom, they want to talk to, you want to tell the neighbor about the mother, his grandmother, his sister, and the great-great-grandmother, and tell him where to take all of them and carry them. You're living in response. And the only reason why you're living like that, where you're reacting to everybody, is because you have never been taught. And the dog, yeah. Don't forget the goldfish. Right? The only reason you're doing that is because you have not been taught what you are, what your purpose is, and you have not designed your life around your purpose. You have not predetermined anything. And so you live on a daily basis making decisions on the go. That is where you're not resting, because you're constantly seeking validation. And what you're doing is getting bursts of validation by what you're doing, what you're saying, how you respond to people. So you're not living in rest. Is that making sense? Type sense. So if we come back to the plan, with regards to, let's say, we come back to the analogy of somebody who's making a plan for their family coming across for 15 days. The opposite of what they're talking about, or what I just explained, is every day you're trying to figure out what to do. They come, day one, trying to figure out what to do. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? I have to figure this out. I have to figure this out and then make this happen. Day two, same thing. No predetermination, no planning, no foreordainment of what's going to take place. So you don't know what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing, and you're trying to sort it out on a daily basis. Most of you, we're speaking about this in the context of healing. Most of you are unable to access healing or to get healed because you are using constant external reference points to tell you how you feel, what's going on in your body, and whether you're being healed or not. Just take a moment and digest what I just told you. Because you're like the person who have the family comes across, the same coming for 15 days, and you're figuring it out every day. You don't have a set prayer schedule. You don't have an objective, and you're working towards that objective. This is why most people see angels and find them strange. Because an angel will come into your midst and you will be smiling, and the angel is not smiling with you. And you find that strange. Why they look so serious? Because they have a foreordained, they are actually on a foreordained movement. And everything that they do is towards that. And if you're laughing about the neighbor, he's not laughing at you. Because that is the objective and that is the mission. Which is why Paul makes reference to a believer. He uses soldier to actually explain the perspective of a believer when he says, no soldier gets involved in civilian affairs. Because the soldier has an objective and has a mission. And if you turn up in your living room tonight on that mission, and you start to talk about and start to laugh about the neighbor and how the neighbor got up, and how the neighbor purchased a new car and fixed their house, and you're talking to God, and that soldier watching you like, what is your purpose here right now? What's your purpose here right now? You alive or dead? It doesn't matter because you're not on the mission. You're in civilian affairs. Is this making sense? A soldier works with a foreordainment. There's a predetermination as to what's going to happen here. And even if it doesn't happen exactly as the soldiers planned, they have a general idea as to where they go and where they fall back on the actual plan. Most of you don't live like that. You're trying to get healing. You're trying to get healing. And you're constantly responding to the doctor report, what they say on Google, how you're feeling, and a list of factors instead of this is the predetermination. So to the soldier, their plan is already foreordained, and all they're doing is executing. The soldier is at rest. You see the soldier fighting, but spiritually the soldier is at rest, because all the soldier doing is executing what has been predetermined. He doesn't come off of that. If he comes off of that, he's not at rest and he cannot fight, because he doesn't know what to do. He has to figure it out every moment. If that's making sense, type time to plan. Everybody, time to plan. So there is no rest. There is no movement. There is no second evening or morning here on the 7th day, because the 7th day is where you're supposed to be perpetually. That's where you're supposed to live. The planning is supposed to be a time that you do that, but you're supposed to be living in rest, like a soldier on the field and executing. What you're doing is executing. That's what you're doing. Okay. All right. Nice. So let's now take a look at what is in verses 2. Verse 2, sorry. It says, on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. Read it again. On the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had made. Then there's a semicolon. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. Notice, his work which he had made is repeated. What the author, that's a couplet. This is actually a form of like a poetic frame here, where those Latin lines written is actually paralleled. What is basically communicating that because those lines are paralleled, the first half of those two sentences are two ways of saying the same thing. Say that again. Just as the latter half of the sentences are paralleled, they're saying the same thing. It's an implication in the text that the first part of both sentences also mean the same thing. They're two ways, or saying the same thing in two different ways. Therefore, we understand that God ended his work and God rested means the same thing, meaning that he ended the planning. Rest means to end. Then it goes on to say, and God blessed the 7th day. Now, do you all remember what the context of blessed was in chapter 1? Anybody remember it? Type in the comment section. I showed you the first mention of blessed. And what was the definition of blessed in the Bible? Not what you think it is. Not what they tell you in church. Not what the English dictionary say. What the Bible exactly, Markisha. To be fruitful, to multiply, and to fill. So when you say, I am when Paul says, and blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed you with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. That is not something that you sit down and you wait for God to receive. The definition of blessed in chapter 1 means that that is installed in you and you're supposed to be fruitful and multiply it and fill the earth with it. You're supposed to fill, which means all the spiritual blessings in the Bible, which is all the promises, are in you, and it is you to manifest it. Do you know that also means that it is also incumbent upon you for healing? Be fruitful, multiply spirit, fill the earth, and subdue it. So the whole idea that you're waiting on God to heal you is the biggest deception that you have been sunk into. Healing is not something that you receive. It is something that you reproduce. That probably takes some of all the intestines out of your stomach there right now. Because everything that Westernized Christianity has taught you is that you need to receive it. No, you're supposed to reproduce it. Because the blessing on the creature is the capability on the creature, in the creature. Which means, if healing is according to the same thing here, the same thing that working with the helper, you need to make your plan and execute until fulfillment. Execute until fulfillment. Because you have to reproduce. It's not something that you're receiving. Remember, Yahweh is Yeshua in flesh. And if you are Yeshua in flesh, therefore you are, Yahweh is the name, is the title that gives an understanding of Yeshua's mindset. Then you self-existent. And what self-existent being depends on something external to receive something. No. Self-existence is self-determination. Self-determination is predetermination, and predetermination is unto execution, which is unto reproduction. We'll take our next drink of water for that, right? I hope it's sinking in. There is a lie bust. Healing is to be reproduced. Hope not, be fruitful, right? A lie bust we have been taught. Alright. Moving on. Watch this. Verse 3. And God blessed the seventh day. Now, this is very interesting. Let's see why you need to rest. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Now we see blessing is being fruitful and multiplying, replenishing, or filling. And according to man is actually even subduing. Sanctifying means to make exclusive to. Sanctifying means to make exclusive to. To consecrate. Then there's a colon. Taking this real slow here. And the colon means expansion or explanation. Which means, because that in it, he blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. Because that in it, he had rested from all his work, which he had created and made. What is this basically saying? Is that only when you rest is what you have created beginning to be fruitful and multiply and to fill the earth. Take your time. Listen to what I'm saying. Only when you come to an end of the consistency of trying to validate, and you rest. is it functioning like a blessing, which means the moment that happens, that, in other words, it begins to be fruitful and multiply and replenish because you rested, because you ended the creative process. That means that a lot of people are not seeing healing because they're not ending the creation. They're not ending the validation. Now, I don't want to say creation because the scriptures already created. You just need to come into union with that. So you don't even have to try to create it. You just need to understand what is created, come into union with that, rest, end your attempt to validate it, and when you end it and you start executing because it is validated, that is when it begins to be fruitful, to multiply, and to fill the earth. Let it sink in. Because you have been taught the opposite. You've been taught you need to pray consistently. The action is not wrong, but you're doing it from a place where you're pursuing validation to the healing based on what you see. And according to this, God validates it according to that which is created. And what is created is in reference to the spirit, the mind and imagination. Is everybody seeing that difference? Type difference. Now, just to get some more context, because you might say, well, Zane, you sure? Let me give you a second witness. Let's go across to Exodus chapter 31. Exodus 31. Turn in your Bibles. And we're reading from verse 1. So far, watch, I'm going to confirm what I just said, right? Now, to understand Exodus 31 here, remember, when man made his decision in the garden, is everybody following what we just said? Type difference in the comment section. I need to know everybody is following. Shout out to Holy Sister Elaine Chong. Blessings and much love, Holy Sister. Awesome to see you here today. I know by you it's daytime. Probably Monday morning already with you, for you, or Monday afternoon, Monday lunchtime. Please recap for the 3 minutes. Okay, so basically what we just identified is that according to this, blessing means to multiply, to be fruitful, to multiply, and to fill the earth and subdue it as well. According to this is basically saying that which is created, that which you planned, that which you foreordained, and if you're talking about healing, only that which you foreordained, when you have ended your validation of it and you begin to execute based on the proper validation of it, that you're not trying to make it real to you again, it is understood, you're self-determined, you understand it, you're predetermined, and you end. Only when that happens does what you create begins to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, meaning it transitions from spirit into the physicality. Maybe I didn't explain that just now, like nobody actually got what I said. it says, and God, so I already in Exodus 31, hold on. It says, in verse 3, and God blessed the seventh day, which is end and rest, end the validation. He blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. What is communicating is only when you have ended your validation of what you desire, what that which you have created, which is in the spirit, that which is created, only when you end the validation of it and you begin to execute without seeking validation of it, that is when the blessing, that as a blessing, comes into the earth. Is everybody following what I'm saying? Type follow. So it's not anything physical first. It's plan come to an end with regards to what you're doing, what the helper will do, and when you come to the end of that, that is when it reveals itself as blessing, meaning it is being fruitful, it multiplies, and it fills the earth. Okay. Now we're going to Exodus 31. Now to understand Exodus 31, what we want to do here, and we're going to come back to Genesis 2, and then we're going to go to Moses after. When you're going to Genesis, to Exodus 31, one of the things I want you to remember is that when you're reading Exodus 31, remember Paul says that everything in the Old Testament is a foreshadow of that which is to come. The reason why he says this is because when man made a decision and switched and made desert in his heart and mind and no more garden by using external things, he used the serpent as his Elohim, as his confidence, and he begins to compare himself to a tree. He finds himself in a desert because he's not reproducing life from garden in him anymore. With the full plan in him, he's actually using a tree to define him, to tell him what he is, and to tell him what to do. When that took place, fast forward to Moses, man, what God did was the gardener was breathing to him because he couldn't reproduce it anymore. God created a physical version of the garden and then gave them a contract to come into the atmosphere of the garden, which means God took the internal and made it external. And then Jesus returns and makes it internal again, which means the whole Old Testament is a manual, an external manual for your internal in the new covenant. Did I communicate that clearly? That means that when you're reading the Old Testament, you should be reading the Old Testament. Yes, there were events, but it is God taking the internal of the man because he couldn't reproduce it in him anymore and made it external. So watch a simple example. Today, man in the garden, all he needed to do was to live from what was inside of him as validated and then just execute it. Which that is him in the spirit, and therefore you could say that he's in prayer, just living from his spirit as his reference point, as a source of wisdom. Man couldn't do that anymore, so God put this, God take the internal and make it external, representing the internal of the man in the garden. But because they're fallen men, they didn't have it in them anymore because of what man's decision was. And so God created the external and bring them into a covenant to bring them into the atmosphere for that. So when you see Jesus and the disciples going to pray in the temple 3 times a day, in your covenant, because it's now internal again, what they're going to the temple to do 3 times a day is a representation of you making reference to what God put in you on a regular basis throughout your day, so that you know how to execute. See what I'm saying? So everything that happens in the Old Testament is really a manual of how you manage the internal things. God took the internal realm of the man in the garden and made it a physical structure, a physical realm, so that technically they were interfacing with what was created to be inside of them. They were interfacing with it physically. That's why when you're reading the Old Testament, you need to understand it is a manual of mindset. It's a mindset manual. So you could look for the names of these people, look for the names of the places. All of those things define a mindset. Everything, every event has names and titles, and you see God's way doing certain things, and then the way of man doing certain things. You could look, and even Curry Blake has actually said this. I was amazed to hear that he actually even understood that, because most people in the Western world don't. Even Curry Blake said this. He said you could go and look for every god that Israel ever interfaced outside of Yahweh, that Israel ever interfaced with from foreign nations. And you realize that every God's name represents a mindset. In the New Covenant, what they interface with physically in the New Covenant, because it's internal now, it represents the mindsets that you need to stay away from, that can enslave you and make you codependent again. So for example, Israel interfaced with certain gods that were gods of fertility, that these uncircumcised nations worshipped. Meaning, worship means that they use that god as a source of wisdom to know what to do and what not to do. In the New Covenant, fertility, the god of fertility in the New Covenant, would means that you are going to encounter information, knowledge that is not from God, that speaks about fertility. Today, a good example of that is women being told that, and even believers fall into it, because they are not taught these things. Women today are taught that you're fertile until 25, and so all women are taught they have a biological clock. Do you know what happens after that? They make fertility a reference point, a source of wisdom, and it begins to guide their actions and their life. Even though you're not interfacing with a physical God like Israel that would go and serve these gods and bow before them, technically, by listening to that information, did God say that? Did God say that the woman have a biological clock? If you're doing that, then you're good as bowing to the idol. You're doing the same thing. You're just not bowing to a structure, but you sure as heck have the mindset of those uncircumcised nations. And you're idol worshiper now. Do you understand you see where I'm coming from? Make sense? Type sense. All biblical stories are mindset maps, basically. You see, remember there are 4 levels of interpretation. Western theology only works with the events. Then you have to get into the hints and the concepts, and then the garden meaning of these things. And when it comes to the garden meaning, you're talking about mindset. Right? Okay, now again, there is Bible dynamics that I had to put into a separate course. If we go down Bible dynamics, we're going to stay here till 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Okay, everybody's saying sense. Good. So when you're reading the Old Testament now, what we're going to read here is actually Israel living physically what was internal in the man in the garden. This is actually concerning keeping the Sabbath. In the garden, it's rest of that which you create. The garden was made physical, and so Israel was kept on a strict Sabbath. Physically representing mindset. So let's read. Everybody following that, type follow, and I'll start to read here. Type follow. Let's roll. So what we're going to look at here is exact what God tells them, and then we're going to relate that to Genesis chapter 2, and you'd realize it's the same thing, just they're doing it on the physical plane, exactly what they were supposed to do on this. What is the decision in the garden? Now, all of this is decision. All of this is decision. Right? You could say that which is a decision in the spiritual realm, in the physical, is called commandments. Decisions in the spiritual realm is called commandments under Moses' law in the physical realm. Okay. You say follow? Alright. Now listen to this. Exodus 31. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, See, I have called by name Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the spirit of Elohim, in wisdom. You remember we spoke yesterday? Spirit of God filling is God's wisdom. Look it right here. They're not making it up, it's in your Bible. Right? Fill him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and in understanding and in knowledge and in all manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold and silver and in brass, and cutting of stones and set them, and carving of timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. Right? I'm just reading fast here because we're actually going to a verse lower down. And I, behold, I have given with him Aholiab, the son of Ahishmach, of the tribe of Dan, and in the hearts of all that are wise-hearted I have put wisdom, that they may make all that I have commanded thee, the tabernacle of the congregation and the ark of the testimony. Notice that in the garden it starts in the beginning, which is in wisdom Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Now Elohim is about to create through Moses the physical model of the garden, physical model of heaven and earth. And what is it speaking about? Wisdom. Is it making it up? Or you're seeing it in the physical model too? Everybody seen that? And in the hearts of all these I have wise-hearted I have put wisdom, that they may make all that I commanded thee. The tabernacle of the congregation, the ark of the testimony, the mercy seat that is thereupon, and all the furniture of the tabernacle. The tabernacle is the garden. And the table and its furniture, and the pure candlestick with all its furniture, and all the incense, and all the burnt offering, and all its fruits, and the laver and its foot, and the cloths of service, and the holy garments for Aaron, the priest, and garments of his sons, to minister in the priest's office, and the anointing oil, the sweet incense for the holy place, according to all that I have commanded they shall do. Notice the tabernacle here is the garden. In the first one in Genesis, in wisdom Elohim created the heaven and the earth, which is the garden. Yeah? The Spirit of God filled the earth. Yeah? The physical tabernacle being created, and what is God filling him with? The Spirit of God. Wisdom. Everybody seen that type? Wisdom. Type wisdom. Right? So here you have confirmation. Same garden, just the physical model, and it's the same thing that is being referenced. Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. God's name means wisdom. His wisdom. Self-existence is wisdom. It's a principle. It's wisdom. All right, moving on. Verse 12. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, which means expansion. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yahweh, which doth sanctify you. Just as you're blessed and God blessed and sanctified, and when you rest, the blessed means it being fruitful. It's also sanctified means that you remain exclusive to your plan. Remain exclusive to the plan. Blessed, sanctified means when you end, you rest, you stay exclusive to the plan and execute. Look, it's saying the same thing here, right? Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you, which means stay exclusive to the rest. Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. Now, God is not just chastising them here, What God is basically saying, if you stay, just as the garden is saying, remember, all of that is life in the garden. So, if you don't rest, you're not going to reproduce life, you're going to reproduce death. What did I just say? The garden is life. Whole chapter, that's all life. And if you don't end or rest from the validation of it, then you're not going to reproduce life. And if there's no life, what you're going to have is death. Which means the sick, in context of healing, you're going to have sickness. So you have to remain exclusive to the plan in rest. So when he tells them, ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you, means stay exclusive to the rest. Everyone that defileth it shall be put to death, is not chastisement. In Moses' law, God took the laws of sowing and reaping in the garden and made it action and consequence. Somebody write that in the chat for me, please. Write that down. Moses' law is a contractual version of the law of sowing and reaping. So what is sowing and reaping in the garden is action and consequence in Moses' law, because God just took the law of sowing and reaping and made it and put it in a contractual version. What did I just say? Anybody in the chat? Do not forget that. Wisdom, this is how you see the law of Moses, through wisdom, through the law of sowing and reaping, which means if you want to reap pears, you need to sow the tree. In Moses' law it says if you want to be blessed, follow the commandments. Moses' law is a contractual version of sowing and reaping. Everybody follow that? Type follow again. Find everybody quiet tonight. This must be a solemn convocation tonight. This have to be a solemn convocation. Thank you very much, Holy Sister Courtney. Follow? Nice. If you're seeing Moses' law through rules, a rule-keeping system, then you're not seeing it through wisdom. Wisdom can only be understood through the natural laws of the Garden of Eden. Which means you have to actually choose, be prudent with regards to what you're sowing to reap what you want. Wisdom brings you into responsibility. Nice. Thank you very much for the Sister Rashida as well. type it before that. Holy Sister Odelia as well. Alright? Moving on. So he says, "Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall be surely put to death." So it means if you're not keeping the Sabbath, then you're going to reap death. Okay, which means if you don't come to rest, you're going to reap death. "For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." All of that is the death. You're reaping a lack of validation means death. Validation in this case means life, which is why God says it is good. It is good means it is validated, it is valid, it is very validated, it's very approved, it's very good. Rest on the approval. So if you're continuously seeking approval for your healing, then you're not in rest, and you don't have life. It's not going to be fruitful and multiply and replenish. Then he says, 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. Now he says holy unto you, then he says holy to Yahweh, which means when you're in rest, you're now making yourself exclusive to God. If you're not in rest, you're not making yourself exclusive to God. Please write that down. It's in your Bible. Is Zane making this up? Anybody? Is Zane making this up? Or is it that I'm just reading what the Bible is saying here? Yes or no? Am I making this up? Or am I just reading? Somebody tell me. Oh gosh. Alright. In rest you are exclusive to God. Exactly. Okay. Verse 14. I just read in exactly what Sister Rashida is doing. I just read in. You learn a lot when you're reading. That's what watch this. "You shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. And every one of the fathers shall be put to death, for whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." Then he says in verse 15, 6 days may work be done. When he says 6 days, immediately, as a hint, the hint is to take you back to Genesis. 6 days, which means this is unto God. God did work on 6 days. But in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy unto God, which means when you come into rest, you become exclusive to God. "Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall be put to death." Listen to that, to the law of sowing and reaping. If you're not resting after the decision, you are going to reap death. See, all of this is basically showing you here that there is power in validation. Verse 16, "Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout the generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever." Now, for all of the westernized denominations here that's saying that they're supposed to keep physical Sabbath, this just invalidates every denomination that says that they had to keep the Sabbath to be saved. Because this right here says it was specific to Israel. If you're reading this through the lens of the garden as a mindset manual, then you need to understand what Israel is. Israel, the word Israel means the ones who rule like Elohim. That means that this is basically saying that this is God telling Israel, the ones who rule like Elohim. And who did God create to rule like Elohim? The man in the garden. So the new covenant, if you're ruling like Elohim, you actually have to function in authority to express your blessing, to reproduce a blessing. You need to function in authority. And authority does not seek validation. Authority functions from validation. Write that down. If you're ruling like Elohim, you function from validation. Authority does not function pursuing validation. Every day is a day of rest in the new covenant. I would encourage you to not look at it like every day. If this is a mindset manual, then rest is a posture. That makes sense. Rest is a posture, rest is a mindset. The days are no longer important. It's a posture. As we cover in here, right? If you're taking it through days, then you're trying to go back and treat this as though this is actually, you're outside the garden and you're going to visit the garden that's supposed to be inside of you. This is where Westernized Christianity is stuck. They're still living like there is no God, no God in them, and they had to go and find the garden. That's why they're talking about rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem and all of these kind of things, because you're saying that Yeshua is the Messiah, but you're not living as though he's the Messiah. Right? Exactly. You can't be in authority and validation, because authority means you can fill other spaces with you. Exactly. To rule like Elohim, you function from validation. Authority does not function for validation. Exactly. Rest is exactly. Right? Remember, it's the Spirit of Christ. You know? The Spirit is like, remember we mentioned, when somebody says, hey, you're in good spirits today, it's because they're in a good posture today. Good heart posture today. It's the same thing. So notice it says here, wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the strong throughout the nation for a perpetual covenant. If you read this through the lens of the garden, perpetual covenant means that this is a spiritual law. A perpetual covenant means it's a perpetual law. Because a covenant is basically where God, in this case, comes together with his word, and you come together with your word. And those words you treat as though they are ordinances. So if he says a perpetual covenant, you could say that this is a perpetual spiritual law. Okay. Then it says, it is a sign between me and the children of Israel. New covenant, you read that it is a sign between me and the children of those who rule like Elohim. Now Jesus is actually seen as Israel in flesh, which means if Jesus is inside of you, then Israel is inside of you too. How many know that Jesus is actually seen as Israel in the Bible? Type me. If you're not sure, I'll show you where right now. Let me get out of the table. Let me get out. We can't be struggling with basic things like that if you're interpreting Bible here. Type me, everybody, me. Anybody here need verification of that in the Bible? If you need verification, type V. If you need verification, type V. V, as in V for validation. Leventi says V, alright? Let me just pause in Exodus 31. We're going across to Matthew. I see V, alright, I like that. We are going across to Matthew. We can also go to Luke. Let me find this in Matthew first. We're into Matthew chapter 2 verse 14. Chapter 2 verse 14. Somebody write that in the chat for me, please. Matthew chapter 2 verse 14. My camera looking a little slanted in. Let me get a little ick. Alright. Matthew 2:14. And it reads, if you have a Bible, go to Matthew chapter 2 verse 14. And it reads, we're in verse 14 and 15 by the way. When he arose, he took the young child. Now, for those of you who actually want context here, this is where Joseph receives a dream. I'm going to read from verse 13 so that we keep the context, right? And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, this is verse 14, and departed into Egypt, verse 15, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Which prophet said that? I will help you out. We're going to Hosea chapter 11. Notice he says, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. We're going to Hosea chapter 11. It was the prophet Hosea that said that. Verse 1. Says, When Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. Matthew quotes the second half of the verse, inferring that Jesus is Israel, and he is reliving Israel's history by having to go to Egypt and come out of Egypt. He's reliving Israel's history as the person of Israel. If you understand that just now, type verified. We have verification then, alright? When Israel was a child, then I loved him and called my son out of Egypt. So Jesus just fulfilled that, to fulfill the prophet is saying, and therefore Jesus is identified by Matthew as Israel. Type verified. All right, now let's return to Exodus 31. Okay. Return to Exodus 31. Let's go. We are in verse 16, Exodus 31. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath. Notice it says keep and observe. Keep and observe the rest. Which means this is not something that you try to make happen. This is something that, this rest is something that you have to follow like a commandment. Everything that Yahweh says, he is Elohim. And if he is Elohim, he is an authority. Here's something that most people are not taught in Westernized Christianity. In the Bible, God's covenant, Moses' covenant, that bound God and Israel together, in the Hebrew text says, it calls Israel's side of the covenant, Israel's word. And God's side of the covenant, God's word. It was translators that translated Israel's side of the covenant and called it commandments, and God's side of the covenant called it promises. Because of that little confusion right there, you have lived all of your life thinking that Israel's side of the covenant was rules, and God's side of something is what they will be rewarded with. No, the covenant doesn't work like that. The covenant was not where you keep the commandments and God in the heaven will bless you. I've covered this in the Priest of Healing and Deliverance session. That is not the covenant. That is a lie. It's a westernized fabrication of Moses' law. Moses' law clearly stated that when you fulfill the commandments, you will be upgraded to a kingdom of priests. And then you take on God's word as your new commandments and fulfill that as law, which means you have now you are returned to cultivating and keeping the garden through God's promises of life. When Jesus was baptized, that is what you witnessed. He kept the commandments, and then the Torah, the covenant, upgraded him to priest. Isaiah 61, Hebrews Isaiah 61, that's the anointing of a priest of Yahweh. Okay, everybody's following that? That's the anointing of a priest. Right, so when you came into Moses' law, you kept the command, you kept Israel said the word, and then you upgrade to priest. And as a priest, you are responsible now for executing and bringing in the promises. Most people are not aware of the fact also that the word promises is actually an expression, and a word also that is actually connected to the promised land. The promised land is the land where you live in all of the promises. Deuteronomy chapter 1, God told Israel, your children who have no knowledge of good and evil will go to the promised land. The promised land was a physical representation of Eden that later became Jerusalem. Because God, the whole Torah is about God create man in the garden, man falls out of the garden, God sends somebody in the capacity of the man in the garden to take them back from the serpent and bring them back into the garden. That is Genesis to Deuteronomy right there for you, big boy. And so your covenant is designed to bring you back into the garden, which is now the New Jerusalem. So when you come into the garden, it's not God, you are to wait on God. Moses' commandments was, go up and possess the land. Take and possess the land. It's not something you receive from God. That's your new commandments that you have to reproduce. Is this making sense? Type sense. Then, so we're reading on. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath. So this here is basically this rest. When you, this is actually like a law of gravity, a law of physics, a spiritual law, not a commandment like a rule. It's a spiritual law, and you have to treat it like that. Full and actually observe it, observe the rest. To keep and observe the Sabbath. Remember, they had to try to keep and observe the Sabbath. Hebrews chapter 3 and 4 says, labor to enter into his rest. That means that the Bible is telling you that you're going to be tempted to go back and try to validate. But keep it like a spiritual law. Observe it. Keep yourself from going back and trying to validate it. Right? For a perpetual covenant. Verse 17, it is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Then you come back again with the 6 days, referring to the garden. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth. Remember, heaven and earth is different from earth and heaven. Heaven and earth is the heavenly aspect of earth, which is referring to the spirit. Earth and heaven is like earthly heaven, which is the earthly aspect of that which is in heaven. He says heaven and earth, which is referring to Genesis chapter 1. In 6 days, for in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. Now they add a next word to rest, an ending. It means to refresh, to be refreshed. Say refreshed, refreshed. That means you shouldn't be ending and worried. You should be ending and be refreshed. Yes, it's done. Refresh yourself. Yeah? Somebody say refreshed. Refreshed. Refresh yourself. Feel refreshed. You see, we read the word from Philippians chapter 2 that says it is God that is in us to will and to work his good pleasure. Yet you want healing and you're not in the emotional posture of pleasure or being refreshed and in pleasure. No, you're in the emotional posture of I wonder if it's working, boy. You're worried. That is not what it says. Be refreshed. Refreshed. Everybody type refreshed. Do we need to get the definition of the word refreshed? I should give you a definition. We get a definition of the word refreshed. How many of us saying that for the first time? How many hearing that for the first time? Write it in the comment section. So that is the law for it to manifest, or I don't want to use the word manifest, but for it to be fruitful and to multiply. You are getting blissed out. What? Refreshed. All right. The word refresh. Let's type the word refresh here. Define refresh. Let's give me a definition, because translators will put words there by chance. No? It don't ever be by chance at all. They have to communicate thoughts, context, ideas. Watch, refresh means to give new strength or energy to reinvigorate, to pour more drink for someone or refill a container with drink. Let me get Merriam-Webster up in the house here. Refresh. To restore strength, Merriam-Webster, to restore strength and animation to revive. To revive, right? To freshen up, to renovate, to restore or maintain by renewing supply, to replenish. See that? To replenish. To run water over or restore water to update. This one will help you out. To update or renew something such as an image. The contents of a computer memory. Let's take out the image right there. The decision that it is validated and be refreshed. Refresh. Right? You are getting blissed out, refresh. Your joy is increasing. Yeah, I demonstrate it. I need to demonstrate it because most people want healing and they live in worried, which is being discouraged. The opposite of being strong. Be strong here means to be refreshed. So when he says to be, and God blessed and sanctified, watch how they parallel blessed and sanctified, because you're ended, and the parallel, the ending and the rest with refreshed. Now this right here is just garden, taking into Genesis to Exodus. Now let me show you how it was the same thing with Moses. Let's see the same thing with Moses. Oh boy. Going back to the Bible. Alright, we're going to Exodus chapter, let's go with chapter 3. Let's see. Is that clear for everybody so far? Is that type clear? Just type clear. Right? So therefore, God is refreshed after he creates, after he makes a plan. Ends that. He makes the plan of what he's going to say, how the helper is going to work with him. You have to do that too. Then that plan is validated. And then he ends that and rests, refreshed. So now, when that happens, then it begins to be fruitful and multiply and replenish, and makes him exclusive to the plan, and makes you exclusive to God. Shout out to Holy Brother Chris Burton. Blessings and much love, bro. I only seen one clear. Everybody clear? Now, you might say, okay, well, Zin, that's a lot. Let's take a look at some examples here now as to how God works with Moses with the same thing. There's the communication of the plan and then execution of the plan. Type clear. Everybody. Let's get some clears in the chat before I move on. While you're doing that, I'm just going to reread it now and listen to now apply what you just learned there now. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them in the spirit. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made. Finished. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Finished. Now notice he says which he had made. Which he had made. Which means it's not only rest with regards to what you're going to do, but also the which he had made. Only the helper in Genesis chapter 1 was creating and making. Created and made. Which means it's actually communicating that you have to come to rest. That the helper is going to do this with you. Whatever role you plan for the helper to do, you're resting considering his the role of the helper as well. And then it says, and God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So you're resting considering the role of the helper. Nice. We wouldn't bother to go into the rest. Just to show you something right here. After he's refreshed, watch how it transitions. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. In the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every plant and every herb of the field before it grew. For Yahweh Elohim had not caused the rain upon the earth. We show you how that is referring to Yahweh man. There was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. This comes after he's now refreshed. He's now ended. He's refreshed that it's done. And now things start to move. There went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahweh Elohim formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Which means everything is now breathed into the dust. And man becomes a living mind, a living soul, a living mind. And man became a living mind. And then he now begins to execute. You see? And refresh, it's breathed into the earth. Things start to move. That's when it now started to transition. If this is making sense, type rest. Type rest, my boy. Rest. Good. That is the one thing that believers have a struggle with. And that's the one thing that Hebrews says, that you need to labor to enter into the rest, to inherit the promise. Marquis says, rest my boy. Yes, rest my boy. Yes. Oh gosh. So now let's look at this in Exodus. Let's see how God moves it with Moses. Exodus chapter 3. I only seen 3 rests. Everybody else. Rest. These things always in the Bible, you know. You notice all I am doing is just reading the Bible to you, you know. I ain't trying to interpret and bend the scripture, you know. Just reading for what it says. That's all. Exodus 3. I've seen 4 rests for everybody else. 5. Everybody else. Rest. Rest, lady, rest. Rest, my boy. Rest. Oh gosh. Everybody else? I've seen 15 people in this live and only 5 rests. What have the next 10? Come on. Is everybody following? Type rest. Right, so whilst we're waiting on that, Exodus chapter 3. Let's move on. There is 6 rests. Right, look at this now. Now Moses, Exodus chapter 3. Everybody ready for Exodus, right? Just give me some hearts on the screen if you're ready for Exodus. Everybody give me some hearts on the screen. Hearts on the screen. If you're ready for Exodus. That might show up faster than the messages. Okay? It takes about a few seconds, or 10 seconds, 15 seconds before you show up here. Everybody ready for Exodus now? Hearts on the screen. Hearts on the screen. Anyways, give us some hearts or some thumbs up. Let's go. Hearts for Exodus. Hearts for Exodus. Nobody ready for Exodus, huh? I ain't see no hearts on the screen at all. Rest and refreshed. Like everybody sleeping their way. Hearts on the screen. Alright. Right? No, when I say hearts on the screen, as in heart the video. No, not necessarily comment, but heart the video so it'll show up faster. No, heart the video. Repeatedly tap the hearts at the bottom so it'll show up on the screen. So I can actually get feedback from you all so that we don't have to I'd rather wait for that to come up in the comment section anyway. I'm looking for a faster way to do it. You understand what I mean? Alright, so see now you have the hearts on the screen so far. And the comments. Let's move on here now. Look how exactly what happens with Moses in Genesis is actually happening with Moses. I want to show you something here in particular with Moses that most people do not realize and have not really paid attention to. The Exodus narrative is not a book where you just read like literature either. The Exodus narrative literally is a manual as well. It's a manual. So it says, verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, now pay attention to what you're reading, because just as you saw in Genesis, it seems in Genesis, before we covered that yesterday, when you read in Genesis, it seems as though it's just repeating itself. And I had to actually demonstrate, actually identify to you what was God and what was the helper. So now repeating itself is actually showing you God and the helper, God and the Spirit. In the same way, God speaks to Moses. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. And when Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. Moses. I mean, Paul, no more depth on that. Moses. Moses. Paul, solemnity on that. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place wherein thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. Now look, just as in Genesis, there was a plan. Look and listen to what God's saying here. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by the reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Notice, what you're hearing here is self-determination. Framing his argument based on what he said before. That's the same thing that you're supposed to be doing. He's framing, he's self-existent, and therefore there's self-determination. He's framing his argument to create his reason, and then after he puts his reason based on what the covenant was, he has good reason, then he begins to predetermine. Watch. And I am come down, so I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. Notice this actually starts in verse 6. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He's identifying those fathers for one reason alone, because he made a covenant with them. So here, the covenant, his word. Then, and Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, my people based on the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. Reason. Covenant. This is the reason. And I am come down to deliver them. Okay? Out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of the land unto a good land and a large, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey, and the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me. And I have also seen the oppression wherein the Egyptians oppressed them. Everybody seen that? Everybody seen self-determination there, right? Write self-determination in the chat. So that's what hard saying. I ain't see any hard. So I never if it working or not working. Everybody seen self-determination? Pay attention, because it's the same God of Genesis working here now. Self-determination. Type self-determination in the chat. I ain't moving on until everybody says self-determination. Okay, nice. I seen one. Let's move on. Anybody else? Everybody like you're dragging tonight, boy. Self-determination. Okay. Now let's look at the predetermination. The self-determined. The covenant was the anchor. He reasons based on the covenant. And now look. Come now therefore, I will send thee unto Pharaoh. I will foreordaining, I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth thy people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Now God foreordaining, And up come Moses. And Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh? That sound like you. That sound like you. And me. Before. Need to stop that. This is where you now countering, creating arguments with God. Right? You actually, God said you're healed, and you're looking for reasons. The same thing Moses is doing is the same thing that you're doing. You're looking for reasons to create arguments with God. It says, and Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee. Notice, watch. Open the eyes. He predetermines, he reasons, he predetermines, and then he says, I will be with thee. This is from the garden as well. God reasons, God predetermines, and then he breathes it into the man, which is what God breathed into the man is like God sending the man to breathe into him. Remember, the Bible says that the word of God is that the word is God breathed. Yeah, it's God breathed, meaning when it's breathed into you, it's like it's sent. You are sent. You're driven. So in the same way, God breathes it into the man, and this man begins to act upon the foreordainment, to execute. You could say that when God breathed it into him, God was with him in the garden. God is telling him the same thing here. This is not a different God, it's the same God. Self-determination, foreordainment, and he says, I will be with thee in the execution. Okay? So it's the same way it works with you. You foreordain, you're self-determined, you're foreordained, you make your plan, and you execute in faith that God is with you, the Spirit is with you, the Helper is with you, according to what you plan to give or according to what you plan for the Helper to do when you speak or act. Right? Then it says, and Moses said unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, that I should bring me forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God upon this mountain. Foreordainment. So this is confirmation that when you start to foreordain, God is with you. Okay? And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of thy fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. Now, very frequently, this is a sad thing right here, because I watch believers write I am all over Facebook, and what they mean and what this translates are not related. They're saying I am, and everybody like to say that I am that I am. What I am means in English means me. God is me. That's what they're trying to say, right? I am that I am translates the Hebrew word ehyeh. That was the first word that was given before Yahweh. There was ehyeh before Yahweh. Ehyeh means I self-exist. Yahweh means he self-exists. But because Moses wasn't comfortable going and saying I self-exists, it kind of random for the Israelites. You go there and say I self-exist. They could actually mix that up when he says Yahweh, which means he self-exists. Is a communication of someone. Just so you know. So no, I'm not bashing you. If any one of you are actually saying I am, that's great. But it is not what the Bible is saying. And if it's not what the Bible is saying, you're setting yourself along a pathway that is not God, and you're not going to see results. And you're going to realize you're not seeing results when you fall on your face. Does this make sense? Here means I self-exist. Okay? And he says, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Meaning I self-exist. Hath sent me unto you. And God said more unto Moses. Wait, before I move on there, is everybody clear on that? Type clear. Just make sure that you understand that. This is about mindset, which means you are the function as yourself exist. And what you're seeing here is Yahweh in execution. He's self-determining. He gives his word, then he determines, he reasons, finds his reason in confirmation with his word, then he starts to foreordain. Okay? Good. Nice. Moving on. Then it says, and God said more unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, Yahweh. Now Yahweh comes in. Elohim of your fathers, which means Yahweh, the strength, the confidence of your fathers, the God of the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say unto them, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the God of Abraham and Isaac and of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have visited you, and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt unto the land of the Canaanites. All this is predetermination. I am going to do this. And the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites unto a land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall hearken to thy voice. So God even predetermining that they will hearken. God predetermining how they're going to respond as well. Which means you could predetermine how your body responds. Okay? This all is in the Bible. My hands in my pocket, I just read it. Right? And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, Yahweh, Elohim of the Hebrews, hath met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journeys unto the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. Okay, predetermination. Type predetermination. Right? Type predetermination. I just read it. Alright. We've seen the same God from Genesis, the same God operating here. Predetermination. Everybody type predetermination. Okay, we're coming in. And then he goes on to say, and I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. No, not by a mighty hand. So he even predetermines that this guy is not going to let him go. And I will stretch out my hand. So God predetermines that he's going to stretch out his hand. I will stretch out my hand. Now all of this is God creating the plan. And he's creating the plan, what he's going to do, and what the helper is going to do. I'll stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders which I will do in the midst thereof. And after that he will let you go. That's not what happened. It didn't happen because God was backing with Pharaoh. It happened because God predetermined that this is how this is going to happen. You do the same thing for healing. Harnessing all of this to bring into healing right here, right? I will stretch out my right. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moses ain't going nowhere yet, you know. He listened to the predetermination. And it shall come to pass, and it shall come to pass, that when ye go, ye shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor and of her that sojourneth in her house jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And ye shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Egyptians. Chapter 4. You ready? Type chapter 4. Give me chapter 4. Predetermination like that. Give me chapter 4. Oh gosh. This gets exciting as you go along and watch. Gosh. Chapter 4. Alright. I see in chapter 4. And Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me. Yeah, Moses reasoned, creating arguments again. Nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Yahweh not appeared unto thee. That's like some of you all saying, behold, they were not, are not believing that I'm healed. For the doctors will say, you have not been healed. Right? So tonight, you all need to stop the reaction, right? Start to forward, again, we're showing you how self-determination is then begins to express itself in foreordainment and then rest. So watch the same pattern we're going on. And Yahweh said unto him, what is that in thine hand? So God's saying, boy, watch me. Watch me. Don't let me hit your hand. Don't let me hit your palm. Alright. What is that in thine hand? Now look how even, so now Yahweh paused on the foreordainment of what is going to go down in Egypt. Moses begins to create an argument. And watch how Yahweh is actually executing what is the same trend with regards to the miracles. Watch this. And Yahweh said unto him, what is that in thine hand? And he said, a rod. And he said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it. And Yahweh said unto Moses, put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand, and caught it. Notice how it is written here, where Yahweh is communicating, and what we think we hear Moses hearing a voice. So you reading this, you think Moses hearing a voice is Yahweh speaking to him, which means Moses is also getting these things as thoughts in him. He's reasoning. I'm going to do this, and this is going to happen. And it's happening, eh? And Yahweh said to Moses, put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And all Moses do is just follow that which has been decided. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that Yahweh, the Elohim of the fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, hath appeared unto thee. Now notice that God tells him to do that. So not only is God showing foreordainment here, and then the man responds, you have been reading this all of your life, thinking that God giving him instruction, he just following God's instruction, things happening. No, Yahweh is self-existent and self-determining, which means for Yahweh to communicate with Moses, he has to communicate through his self-determination as well. You follow what I'm saying? So then he begins to self-determine, and he understands it as a form of foreordainment, and he acts. On top of that, God tells him, God foreordains, you will do this when you go, to prove to them that I have sent you. So Moses just going, now once Moses actually understands that foreordainment, he can now rest. And when he goes to the court, he doesn't need to try to make it happen. He just needs to act upon what was done. Put forth thine hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. that they may believe that Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, hath appeared unto thee. And Yahweh said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, Put forth thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they believe not also that these two signs, neither hearken to the voice, that thou shalt take of the water of the river, and pour it upon the dry land. And the water which thou hast taken of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. All of that right there is what? Predetermination. After the self-determination, where he references the covenant, and he says, because of this covenant, this is why I need to do this. I'm going to do this. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm going to do. And then he reels out the foreordainment. Is everybody seeing predestination here? Sorry, predetermination. Type predetermination again. Type predetermination. Remember, Yahweh is self-existent, and if he's communicating self-existently. And if self-existence is self-determination, then he's communicating through his self-determination. Okay, so then there's foreordainment, and he begins to execute. Foreordain, executes. Predetermination. All right. Verse 10. And Moses said unto Yahweh, O my Lord, I am not eloquent. Argument again. And neither heretofore, for since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech, and of a low tongue, and of a slow tongue. And Yahweh said unto him, What made man's mouth? So Yahweh telling him again, big boy. Big boy. You're looking for a hand. I am the God of your fathers. Why the arguments? Anyway, that's just my version there, right? So listen to what he says. Now, but in this point of the narrative, this is where a very important factor of what you see in Genesis begins to play out here. God is going to tell him, basically, he's responding to him, and when Moses responds with that argument, God is going to respond to him, and what God is going to do is to tell him something in particular that's going to help you understand this better. And this is actually a manual I'm going to show you here that all priests and prophets use to understand the Genesis narrative better, as to how to walk. Even Jesus would have studied this manual as to how to walk in power. Moses said unto Yahweh, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant. But I am slow of speech, and of a slow tongue. And Yahweh said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb or deaf, or the seeing or the blind? Have not I Yahweh? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. Notice he says, I will teach you what thou shalt say. You live in life thinking that you're going to hear a voice and you need to do hear the voice. No. Teach you, it means you have to self-determine it. Yahweh's going to speak to you, and then it's going to, when he says teach, to teach in the context of Yahweh means to teach you how to reason. To teach means to teach how to reason. So whilst all of your life you've been taught you need to hear the voice of God and follow the voice of God, it does not work like that. Because Yahweh is self-existent, he speaks to your self-determination, which means there's thoughts are going to come up into you and you need to actually find justification for those thoughts, and then stay self-determined, and then you forward in. Is that making sense so far? There's been so much abstract nonsense that has been taught to believers that you're trying to override your very spirit, because all you want is for God to speak to our voice and you could obey and see things happen. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to self-determine and then predetermine, which means Yahweh is going to speak to him and then he has to reason that and take action after he reasons and he's settled with it. Then he could forward in. When he could forward in, then he starts to execute. Remember, the one who bears fruit is the one who hears and understands. If you're following, type predetermination again. I know I have you writing it over and over. It's not because I'm just looking for a response. No. I want to get it into your mind. Self-determining, predetermining, then execution. Okay? Predetermination again. Type it in the chat. Now therefore, go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. Does that ring a bell for everybody? They're not looking for a voice. The thought comes up, and you need to actually self-determine. Does that ring a bell for everybody? If that rings a bell, type me. Boy, the amount of things. As Holy Brother Norman said yesterday, the amount of things. You're up the creek without a paddling. You're looking for a voice. The scripture says, I will be with thy mouth and I will teach you what you shall say. So he had to receive the thought and then reason that. And his reasoning is God teaching him. Hey, this is what you need to say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moses. Now God started to get upset. I said, brother, I am eternal. I am the self-existent and the eternal one. If what I say is eternal, why you reason with me? Why are you trying to argue with me? You speaking from a codependent and a temporal mindset. You're speaking to the eternal. Finger on your lip and listen to the eternal. Because what the eternal say is going to be eternal. Right? Okay. She says, and the anger of Yahweh, because remember the Yahweh plane is actually demonstrating a role in the narrative, right? So which means when it says Yahweh says, it means he's speaking self-existently. The one who is arguing with Yahweh is therefore speaking codependently and temporal. So it gets Yahweh his anger, which means he getting irritated, getting indignant. And Yahweh said, is not Aaron that delivered thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. Watch me. Everything that Yahweh is saying here is not on the spot, you know. Even when he's talking about his brother, is predetermination. Even when he's speaking about the brother, listen. Is not Aaron delivered thy brother? I know that he can speak well. Self-determination. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. Predetermination. Reason. Predetermination. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth. Colon. And I will be with thy mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. You gotta reason it. Yeah? And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people. This is where it gets interesting. And he shall be, even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. Pause. This is where the narrative gets very interesting. Write this down. Notice that Moses creates arguments with the self-existent and the eternal. He's speaking codependently, and he's speaking temporally. And what God does right here is what makes this manual a magnificent manual that most believers in the westernized world do not know that they have in their hand. God then takes the breath and the body of Genesis chapter 2. The breath breathed into the body. God makes Moses the breath, and he makes Aaron the body. So now all you need to do is to continue to read through the lens of what we covered in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And you could see Moses is the breath, is playing the role of the mind, whilst Aaron is playing the role of the body. You always had that manual in your hand. This manual is now going to break down how it happens. You always had this manual in your hand. Jesus, priests, prophets learned how to walk in God from this manual. Yeah? I know you're hearing that for the first time, unless you're in our coaching course with me. Nobody in the westernized world know that day. Because they don't know the name, and they don't know the garden. And they don't know that Moses is given the name of the man in the garden to go and take back the people, to go and take back man from the serpent in response to Genesis chapter 3. And therefore Moses is now being used as the person, Moses and Aaron are now being used to show men who are actually in the physical model of the garden to show them, men who are actually taking on the name, how to be like God, as you see in the garden. But because the garden is spiritual, more spiritual in nature, God decided to take Moses and Aaron and use them and separate the two. So you could watch Moses to understand what you need to do in the mind, and watch Aaron to understand what you need to do in execution. This does not leave room for abstract thoughts. This is very practical. You just need to pay attention. Everybody with me? It seems like everybody just get dumbfounded there. Everybody with me? Give me some sign of life. Some sign of life. Anybody? Some sign of life. It is like the John and Peter. Well, Peter and John, it's not the same thing. You see something with them, yes, but it's not really the same thing. Right? Peter and John would have actually even studied this as well. Okay, I've seen some signs of life. Okay, so let's pay attention now. So he just says, and he shall be thy spokesman unto the people. Spokesman is the translation of a word that actually means prophet. Right? Sorry, it refers to prophet, not translation of prophet. It refers to prophet because the prophet is actually called spokesman. So therefore you could say that Moses is playing the mind, which is God, the spirit, and the different Bible. What is Sister Odelia? What do you mean by different Bible? Moses playing the mind, and Aaron playing the role of the prophet. Let me see what's going on here. Oh Lord, what time it is? We might have our third night, boy. This going long. 2 hours and 28 minutes. Lord. Oh Lord. Is everybody good to go on? Or should I stop? Or should I pause it? Keep going. It's okay. First time hearing. Okay. Is everybody good to go on? I need everybody just to get a general consensus. If not, we pause and we continue with this. The Venti says good to go. All right. Everybody else? Go. All right. That is 3-person. Holy Sister Monica says pause. All right. So this is chapter 4. All right, so I can't go through this whole manual with you, all right? We'll have to watch replay. It's getting late. Good to go. All right, so I've seen 2 people saying that. So what I'm going to do is just finish this chapter, because we still have to go into chapter 6 and 7 for you to see how this plays out, especially chapter 7, to see how this plays out. Especially with the miracles, you see the same pattern. Self-determination, predetermination, execution. So what I'm going to do is finish chapter 4 here today. About 50 minutes. And then what we will do is plan for tomorrow night. Right? Happy O'Clock starts at 9 and finishes at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So I could be back tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time again. That makes sense, everybody? Pause to allow time to digest. All right. Yeah. I understand. Because this is like, I know this is a lot. And especially for somebody, probably if you're hearing this for the first time, there's a lot to absorb. Alright, so we will do this, we'll continue tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Tuesday we have, we call it Priest and Healing and Deliverance session. Wednesday night we have crucifixion, 10 facts about the last 10 facts about the crucifixion. All Thursday I'm in coaching up to the night, and Friday will be the next time that I will actually have available. Friday night in particular might be more on a familiar note, so the next time after tomorrow will be Saturday. Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday. We could possibly do a Wednesday night after the 10, but we will see how that goes. So let's just finish this chapter. Notice how God is continuously speaking in predetermination. And then, technically, then these guys go, and what they're doing is just executing the predetermination. And we had to go into chapter 6 and touch chapter 6 specifically, and then chapter 10 touch chapter 7, so you can see, because this manual is a long manual, and we're not going to go through the manual because this is not the purpose of this, right? This is just for you to show you the pattern of self-determination, predetermination, execution, and how these guys did it. And then we still need to go and touch Jesus, so you can see how Jesus did it, because Jesus actually self-determined. He self-determined, and then he predetermined, and then he went. That's in your Gospels, but you will not have seen it. And Paul did the same thing. All right. So let's continue. Let's just wrap. Let's just wrap this up here. All right. So verse 26. No, sorry, verse 16. And it says, "And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God." So here are now playing the mouth or the prophet, the spokesman, and Moses playing spirit, the rule of the spirit and body. Now you're watching these two, as I mentioned, to see how it works. Right? And thou shalt take this rod in thine hand, wherein thou shalt do signs. Predetermination. All of this is predetermined. All of this is predetermination here. The self-determination is done. All of this is the predetermination. If you are a son of God, this is exactly how you function. Jesus did it as well. And Moses went and returned to Jethro his father, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. And Yahweh said unto Moses in Midian, Go, return to Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought thy life. And Moses took his wife and his sons and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the rod of God in his hand. Notice that Moses is not trying to validate this anymore. Same thing from Genesis. He is now executing. There is validation. He's in rest. He's now refreshed. Rest ended. What God says, he rested on that. He's refreshed, and now he is in execution mode. Yahweh said, right, and took the rod on his hand. And Yahweh said unto Moses, When thou goest to return into Egypt, see that thou do all the wonders before Pharaoh, which I will put in thine hand. But I will harden his heart. He shall not let the people go. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith Yahweh, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn. And it came to pass, by the way in the inn, that Yahweh met him, and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at his feet, and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me. So he let him go. Then she said, A bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision. And Yahweh said to Aaron, Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and met him in the mount of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words of Yahweh, who had sent him, and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken unto Moses, and did the signs in the sight of the people. See? Execution. So he communicated, and he just executed, because it's foreordained. You just execute, and what is foreordained, you just remember, blessed and sanctified. Basically, sanctified means stay exclusive to the foreordainment. That's basically what it means. Just as Israel, stay exclusive to the Sabbath. The Sabbath is being exclusive to God. So they remain in exclusivity, sanctified unto the foreordainment, and they just do the signs. Just do exactly how it was foreordained. So the helper knows what he's doing with you. And the people believed, and when they heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked upon them for their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. And we pause there. Is that making sense? Does it make sense? Type sense? Is this helpful so far? Is this helpful so far? Let me see. Please let me know in the comments. And while you're doing that, this will bring us to the end of this segment here tonight. So this is the end of part 2. We're going to have a part 3 where I'm going to take you to chapter 6, well, specifically chapter 6 and chapter 7. Then we're going to fast forward to Jesus. Then we'll fast forward to Paul. Yeah? Remember, Yahweh, self-existent, means self-determining. Self-determining can only function in predetermination. And then execution. There must be rest with the predetermination. Rest end the validation of that, and be refreshed and start executing. This is all of your Bible. Alright, once again, for those of you in particular who are interested in, number 1, understanding the Gospel of John through the lens of everything that I'm actually walking you through here, you can become a spiritual gold member on our Patreon community and access our Rebooted Biblical Perspective educational podcast. If you would just like a podcast that actually shows you how to take and apply these things to your life, the name to different life situations, you become a Shining Star member, where you can access Bible study mentorship sessions and so on, as well as for those of you who are interested in actually getting into a coaching program, a self-paced coaching program. I literally recorded we have recordings of coaching program called Putting On the Name, which is where we take the name, just as I'm showing you here in the scriptures, and give you a formal education of the name, introduction to the name, and the garden, which is a lot more than what we cover here in this session, because this is specific to rest. We show you what that is, and how the name in particular is a cognitive law of mindset, how you apply that. The Garden of Eden as a manual of the spiritual realm, as you all are beginning to see. And then we show you how to reorientate your spiritual life from the Westernized Christianity, from the things you've been taught, and reorientate your spirituality to start to function like an ancient priest in the name. Ancient priests took on the name as their vocation. Yeshua took on the name just like an ancient priest. We show you how to do that with your spirituality. We also show you how to do that. Well, we can introduce you also to what a prophet is from Scripture, and we also have you. We also do that with regards to understanding health through the name. So you can cut off all of these external reference points that you're using for wisdom in your health, and begin to live a foreordained life in health, so that function from divine health. Right now, as I mentioned yesterday, of course we'd like to provide all of these things for free, but we have expenses to even operate and do everything that I'm doing here. We have operational expenses, we have overhead expenses. Right, so if you would like to access that self-paced training program, it's literally, you get 17 sessions, and these sessions are 2 hours, 3 hours long. So you have a proper explanation as to how you go about doing it, and you're also going to be added to a Telegram community. You'll be added to a Telegram community where you can ask questions. I'll be there for the first 3 months, so you can ask questions. And as you learn, self-determine, then predetermine, and then execute, provide you with an actual framework that I've actually over the time of applying myself to the priesthood, that I've been able to develop to help you to practically break from denominational Christianity and all of the bonds that come with that, and step into the priesthood in a very practical and concrete manner. So it eliminates all of the westernized problems, which is basically understanding what covenant is and how you apply a covenant to your life, like the ancient priests. So you can actually begin to walk in the name, in the power of God right now, and not have to deconstruct. Deconstruction is going to destroy a lot, and it's going to waste a lot of time. You can prove the westernized perspective is wrong when you come into the covenant practically. Coming into a covenant is no different from finding a job. A covenant and employment is the same thing. And in that training program, I walk you through that so that you can understand how to come into the covenant and start to live in heaven here now, whilst you prove the westernized doctrines wrong. Deconstruction is not the route that you should follow. There is a reason why the scriptures actually says resurrection. Resurrection is not deconstruction. Deconstruction is not resurrection. That's a typical Western Christian believer, the Greco-Roman believers, that's a typical go-to. And that in particular is where they're making massive mistakes. Right? So if you're serious and you'd like to access those sessions in the Telegram community, we will also be transcribing those sessions in the future. Once you're part of that community, when we transcribe it, you get those ebooks free, and eventually you're going to actually create a book from the content that are unpacked there. This is 17 sessions with content that actually set you on the path, and you can ask questions as you go along. When you make it a book, the ebook, of course, will be free to you. Right? We want a community, not just the people that want to walk. We want a community that's actually walking in the priesthood. It is our objective to create a community, a community of believers that are actually walking this out as we explain it here. So you can demonstrate the power of the name, because Westernized believers do not know the power of the name. They know the name as an identifier, and they don't know that the name in particular is the answer to all of your questions, of all of your problems. The answer to on how to read your Bible, the answer to your spiritual life, the answer that you've been looking for is the name. And when we encountered it in 2018, it dramatically changed everything. We submitted this to practical application and hands-on application for the last 6 years now, and it's been phenomenal. Everybody that we've trained experienced the same. So it's not Zane is super anointed. It was simply the components of Yeshua, of the scriptures that were left out in Westernized Christianity, and it left everybody guessing, which is why we have over 3,000 denominations statistically today. All right. So right now, these are 17 sessions in a Telegram community. If you're interested, and you want to purchase it tonight, we are already offering it at 50% off, and I will give you a further discount of $200 off of that, so that you can actually slip into that. All right. We would like to create a community of people that are actually walking in this name and experiencing it and expressing it with intention. Intentionally. So on that note, use the link in the description if you're interested in that. And I shall see you all tomorrow. So huge shout out to Holy Sister Sybil, to Holy Brother Leventi, Holy Sister Odelia, Holy Sister Monica, Holy Brother Norman, Holy Sister Markisha, Holy Sister Tonya, Holy Sister Kimberly, Holy Sister Courtney. They're shouting out everybody. You know what? Usual. Just want to make sure that everybody gets a little shout out. If I don't call your name, please pardon the oversight. Alright. Holy Brother Telvin. Holy Brother Elijah. Who's that? Holy Sister Eileen. She probably... Some of these persons probably left. Yeah. Right. If I didn't call your name, please pardon the oversight. And we see each other tomorrow. You all have a very pleasant night. Blessings to all. And do enjoy your day. For those of you on the daytime side of the world, Holy Brother Leventi, Holy Sister Eileen, and for the rest of you, have a pleasant night, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Blessings and much love. Boom. Yeshua.